good does it get, SK?
Why not Australia?
Today, live from the Pinecrest Inn, it's the Smylie Show. So long, everybody.
This is the Smylie Show.
All right, we are thrilled to be joined now on the Smylie Show by Golf Digest writer, some may say senior writer, Shane Ryan. We're handing out titles here on the Smylie Show. Shane, it was great to see you at the PGA Championship this last week at Aronimink, and we have a lot to unpack here, but I think the place we have to start was your amazing line of questioning with Garrett Kigo, following up on the whole story that was late to the tee time on Thursday. Can you just run us through that press conference and just the line of questioning for him there? I think Smylie loved the follow here. Let's just do an oral history of how that all went down.
Sure. You had to be just licking your chops, man. Like when he sat down, it was just been like, I'm about to cook this young man.
Well, I saw the clip that you guys talked about, and I got a lot of praise for literally just saying, I don't really know what you mean. So it's the least I've ever done for the most praise, but 100% I'll take it. But yeah, so I mean, everybody knows Garrett Kigo missed his tee time, which is already I think that is really interesting for people how that can happen. With something so important at such an important event. But I think it was the stuff that came after that really kind of made this sort of a really tasty, pre early week story, right from his Marty Smith interview on ESPN. And that was the first time I actually saw that right before our press conference when he said, I was late, but I was on time, if you know what I mean. He said the same thing to Marty Smith. And in my head, I was like, in a sitcom, the response would be, I don't know what you mean, Garrett. I have no clue what you mean. So then he came, and I was just asking him questions. We all were asking him questions about being late, and the explanations were confusing. And he just so happened to say that line. He said his line to me, and I was just like, this wasn't a performance. I was just like, it's so easy sometimes, I think, when you're talking to a player to kind of accept whatever they throw at you and kind of to turn the follow-up part of your brain off because, they're a little bit higher they're a lot higher status, and it feels like almost rude to question them. But I think, to pat myself on the back, I think that killed that modesty in me a long time ago. So it was easy for me to go, Garrett, I don't know what you mean when you say you're late but on time. And then that kind of led to just more absurdity. So I loved it. I thought it was so funny. And I have to say, guys, afterward, I was thinking about it, and I don't want to give him too much credit here, believe me, but I'm like, does he have a point? Because the tee time says 7:18. It doesn't say 7:18:00. So if he got there at 7:18:30, is he truly late? It got me questioning time, the nature of existence. It was really some profound stuff.
Well, we appreciate you asking the hard-hitting questions because that was a grade A as far as journalism goes. The real journalism, Big J journalism, as Charlie likes to call it. So yes. Well done. And of course, we just wrapped up, Shane, at a PGA Championship. I think we're all still kind of trying to sort through exactly what we watched. We knew we saw something pretty epic from Aaron Rai. I mean, the stuff that he did on the back nine undoubtedly earned that major championship. But can we look at the PGA Championship and what it is now? We've Charlie and I have spoken a lot about this over the last couple episodes. Since the PGA Championship has moved to May, Shane, I think we've kind of tried to figure this thing out. It's different venues. Oftentimes the weather can be a little different, than what we're accustomed to with the PGA Championship in August. And I don't think people really can put their finger quite on it. I don't know if you feel quite the same way. But I mean, if you like good golf, we just had a pretty dang good golf tournament. It just feels a little bit condensed compared to where it used to fall on the schedule.
Yeah, I think mostly I agree with you. I think there are certain things that are a big problem, which is that, first of all, the Masters just has such a rock solid identity because it's at the same course every year. It's the only one. Then you look at the Open where it's, always on the links, the wind is blowing. It's very easily identifiable. Then you have the U.S. Open, which is not just our national championship, but is kind of known for being difficult and the conditions are hard. So that gives it sort of an identity. And like you said, for the longest time, the PGA's it's not a good identity, but it was like, we're last, right?
It was Gory's last shot, right? Like that was the tagline.
which
was
was
great.
kind of a good tagline. Yeah. And so now they're not Glory's last shot anymore. When they initially moved, I kind of thought it was good for them, though. And I still maybe think it's more exciting to have them in that slot because everybody's thinking about golf. You just had the Masters. Everything's coming up. I always kind of felt they were an afterthought in August, actually, despite trying to market it as like, this is our last chance. It's like, well, okay, we're all excited for the Ryder Cup coming up and the British Open was awesome. And now we have this. So I think you're right that they don't really have an identity. Although one idea is like, we're the weirdest one. I kind of think that's where they should go. This is where Scotty Scheffler gets arrested. This is where people miss tee times, right? This is like, so I mean, like there's one idea. I don't know if they're going to appreciate that kind of marketing advice, but I still think they're better off in May. And I know I'm probably in the minority on that one, but I just still think it's a more exciting time of the year to have it.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at, because I was interested to do this sort of experiment, look back at, for me, I looked at 2010 through 2019, where there was that sort of shift into May. So if you're looking at score to par, Jason Day, 20 under in 2015, Rory McIlroy, 16 under in 2014, Jimmy Walker, 14 under in 2016. There are a lot of low scores to par. And then we're looking at, I know the two previous years prior to Aaron Rise win at Aronimink, we had Xander Schauffele 21 under at Valhalla, Scotty Scheffler 11 under at Quail. But the scoring in May has been a lot closer to a rigorous major test. You had Phil Mickelson 6 under, the winning score at Kiowa, Justin Thomas 5 under at Southern Hills, Brooks Koepka 9 under at Oak Hill, and Aaron Rai 9 under at Aronimink. And I'm wondering, really specific to Oak Hill and Aronimink, there is this sort of, I mean, if it's Northeast golf, there is this sort of emerging from spring, this sort of cold weather, unique sort of test that I know we're not going to find every single time, but there's something there. Like there is something, if you're trying to kind of find a new identity in a different part of the calendar, you're offered an opportunity here to kind of find something that where if you can go to these Northeast venues and find a specific type of golf, it's providing a test that's compelling, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I thought Aronimink was super compelling, all the more so because everybody had it figured out on Wednesday, right? It was going to be 23 under, it was going to be the winning score, and then it completely defied expectations. It showed how much you can do with a course like that. So, yeah, I mean, look, if that were going to be the continuing identity, I think that would be great. I don't really, I know it's in Frisco next year, so it's obviously not in the Northeast. I don't know what it is going forward, but I would imagine it would be hard for them to keep coming back to the Northeast. But I would love that as a Northeastern guy. I think that would be really cool. But yeah, I think you're right. I think, every year we kind of are, agonizing about what is the PGA Championship's identity. And it's like, look, it's always going to be the fourth major until the Players gets in, then it will be the fifth major. No, but it's always going to be the fourth major. It's always going to lack the identity of the other three. I almost want to just stop stressing about it and just go, let's see what they can do, right? Let's see. And I thought Aronimink was a success because it was so strange. I know maybe we'll talk about the course setup and the big debate that was raging, but overall I was like, this was weird and interesting at the end of the day. And it produced a cool finish, I thought. Maybe it wasn't Scheffler or Rory or Rahm winning, but it really was a guy who had to go out and earn it. And yeah, I just thought this was cool. This is a cool tournament.
Yeah, I was telling Charlie this, kind of talking about the course setup. I was saying that it reminds me of a PGA Tour tournament, but they'll push the boundaries a little bit more. I think back to the Southern Hills on a couple par threes. I think it was maybe the 8th hole. It was like this par three. It was JT had shanked it on that hole earlier in the tournament. And I think it was 8. I'm not quite positive. My memory's not serving me the best right now in that. But then I think about other par threes. Quail kind of, it is what it is, right? They always tip it there. But even at Aronimink, man, they were pushing it to 240, where there was days where I know, and I'm so positive that the PGA Tour would have played different tees and not use a certain hole location based on the setup, which I think is why you saw a lot of the players whining.
The UIM Formula One World Championship Series. We are over the moon excited about the upcoming season.
Let's go.
10,000 horsepower roars off the dock. Oh my, there's a problem. On the outside, side by side.
And he's lost control of the boat.
Hopes and dreams of winning here.
Yes!
Get ready for round one, the Regione Sardegna Grand Prix of Italy, May 29th to 31st.
Craig Carton along with Tyrone Johnson. We got great news for you. CraigCartonShow.com. And Tyrone, what do you get if you go to that amazing website?
Well, right now you can subscribe to our upcoming newsletter. You put in your email address, and then bang, you'll get all the new Craig Carton Show content when it arrives.
Not just that, you also get merch drops, exclusive content, and appearances. So again, one more time, that website is CraigCartonShow.com.
That's where Abdul Carter. Hey, son, you want to be a leader? Show up to meetings on time. Don't be late to practice. This guy's sitting there trying to tell me that he's got a problem with Jackson Dart going to a Trump rally when he can't even show up to a meeting on time? And he can't show up to practice and he's late? Dude.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
And so that was the huge debate with Aronimink, where was, were enough high quality golf shots that, I mean, you can use the top players' names you want, you can use whoever you want. Were they good enough to separate to where a player who maybe was a little bit less inaccurate, let's say off the tee, did they all end up playing with the same type of action, especially if you're off the fairway coming into the greens? And my answer would be that it didn't separate itself enough because of how difficult they made it and just kind of the course setup.
Yeah, I think Rory's quote was the first one to kind of illuminate that for me, where, everybody was talking about it's really hard to make birdies, but he was the first one to go, it's kind of hard to make double bogey too. It's kind of hard to make bogeys even. And to your point, like watching Cam Smith, I mean, I don't think he hit one fairway right on Sunday, but he was kind of fine. I mean, it really wasn't punishing him enough. And so that would be the flip side of that. And, there's a certain amount of, actually, Smylie, you would know this better than I would. I was wondering, when Rory says stuff like that, he's obviously coming from a place of, sincerity. Is he working the refs a little bit too? Because the Rory game is like, I want to be rewarded for a perfect drive. I want to have an angle, into the pin where I can make birdie. And obviously, if there's enough controversy, things can change within 3 days, right? It can be different on Sunday than it is on Thursday. So
great question.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there a working the refs angle if you're a big enough name? I was kind of curious about that.
Well, my feed or my response there would be is that, we're so used to guys like Rory and Scotty have really good driving days and just find a way to just run away from fields when they got it going on. But this place was so unique in that you would hit potentially good drives and they wouldn't find the fairway because of the pitch and just how firm and fast they were playing, and the wind, and a very tricky wind. I mentioned this to Charlie. And so part of me is like, you know what, that's kind of the beauty of golf, right? Is having to make adjustments to find the fairway and to eventually be able to outsmart somebody and outpatient somebody. And that's kind of the point of a major championship, right? Like that's kind of what we're testing.
Aaron Rye hitting 3-wood at 15 on Sunday,
Yeah.
Which, like, I think that, like, yeah, you can play the refs here in this, but this is a good thing, like the way it played. Like, you had to make adjustments.
I think implicit in Rory's comments and a little bit of some others was, the way I score well is the way that golf should be played and the way golf should be differentiated. And
absolutely agree.
And a lot of people believed him, and a lot of people endorsed that. And I think for the most part, that is how it's done. It just so happened that this is a very different test where this, it's funny because usually I have a strong opinion, but like Smylie, like what you said before, I see it from the other side. I can see like this didn't differentiate enough. It's bunched up. But then on the other hand, part of me is like, well, it was a test of incredible discipline, right? We're not going to reward you every time. You can't screw up. And then at the end, you've got a surge, right? It's going to be the guy who shoots 65 from that leading pack that's going to win it on Sunday. And I'm like, I think there's room for that, right? And I just thought back to the U.S. Open. I used to be the guy who was like, I love to see the players struggle no matter what. But then Oakmont last year, I was completely bored by it. It was just like, if you miss the fairway, you're completely screwed. You're in 3 feet of rough. This to me was interesting. Probably partially for the debate that it prompted. But like you said, I think Alex Smylie was also saying there's certain fairways where it's like, I cannot envision how to hit this fairway. Like I literally can't, I'm a professional golfer and I cannot picture how this is going to work. And so, there's the riddle of how to make birdies and the riddle of how to avoid frustration. It just felt compelling to me in a way Oakmont wouldn't be, or places like that.
Shane, what does your perfect PGA Championship identity look like? Like we've had conversation in the past about should it be international? Like what should it be easier than the U.S. Open? Should it be harder? Whatever it is, in your mind, if you're constructing it on your own, what does it look like?
So at this point in my life, I have kids and I don't like to leave the country. So no for international.
I feel that.
Keep it within 100 miles.
We are all the same. 100 miles within Durham would be great, right?
Exactly. I was just going to say that. Yeah.
We can carpool. You and I carpool. It's great.
Yeah, totally. No, it's a good question. Like I said, I don't stress about it that much where I'm like, I don't think it needs an identity. It's a major, right? I mean, that's its identity. It's the major of the PGA Club Pro, basically, is the history behind it. And that's cool in its way. And so it's always going to be that. It doesn't have to fret. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of how I feel. And, but I will say, last year, Rory getting his driver tested, the year before, Scotty getting arrested, this year, Garrick Higgo, John Rahm hitting a volunteer in the face with a divot. It's just so funny. There's been some funny stuff. So I'm not suggesting that the PGA lean into that, but I would love it if it kept accidentally happening. I think that'd be hilarious.
Also, we have to mention, you were contending with Doug Ferguson and Xander Schauffele for the best exchange between the press corps and the player that week.
Yeah.
Of the Doug, hey Xander, do you like trees? Like, I do like trees. Doug, do you like trees? It has this sort of bizarro identity, which in a way is, I mean, if we're looking for entertainment in this game, it's providing that the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's, so last year watching Scotty and, Rahm was in the mix. The year before, Xander beating Bryson. People have a lot of criticisms of Valhalla, and I'm just kind of looking down the list here. Yeah, I was in Oak Hill when Brooks beat Victor. That was a great final round. Justin Thomas, obviously, with Mito Pereira screwing up on the 18th hole, playoff with Will Zalatoris. Then you had Phil winning at Kiowa. I mean, even the COVID year, right? I mean, that shot by the drive by Morikawa to get his eagle, was it 16? I can't remember what hole. I think 16. Anyway, it's like these tournaments have consistently delivered. It's like there's not a dud in that list I just named. It's like you go with the U.S. Opens, there were, I'm not saying there were duds, but there were some that weren't kind of up to that level. So I have no problem with the PGA. I'm a lover, not a hater of the PGA Championship.
But now up to bat in the 9 hole, it's PGA Frisco. We got 2000. we have some titans they're up against, and this is nothing against PGA Frisco. It's more so that it's Augusta National, it's Pebble Beach, it's St. Andrews, and then it's PGA Frisco. It just feels that, like, when we talk about identity for this event, that's why I feel, the PGA Championship next year, especially the fact that not only do they have it next year, but they also have it booked for 2034. If it doesn't go well for the viewer's standpoint, or just, how the players receive it, or the weather's, doesn't cooperate, it's going to have a stink to it. Do you not feel that way a little bit? Because it's, it's not necessarily an iconic venue. It's a created venue for the PGA.
I hadn't thought about the other venues. That's very funny that it's Pebble, St. Andrews, and obviously Augusta. Yeah, I think so. I mean, that stands out like a sore thumb. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Frisco is going to be like. It's already, Smylie, like even in your tone, it's like there's a certain humor or like kind of a jokiness about Frisco where it's like it's their home course. Nobody knows much about it. Nobody's impressed by it. So I don't know. I'm kind of hoping they have a chamber situation where the greens go. Let's exacerbate it. Let's lean.
Let's keep it weird. Let's just keep it weird.
Let's keep it weird. Let's have a total disaster in Frisco next May.
Well, I mean, there really is. If you can take a dice roll of any of the three majors, or any of the four majors, I'm sorry, this is the one to take a dice roll on, right? I mean, I'm not saying I think there's almost unanimously a sort of skepticism in the world of golf and golf media about PGA Frisco, but this is the major where you can afford to say, hey, let's just see how it goes, and who knows, we might be pleasantly surprised, right?
Well, it just Texas, like typically Texas on TV, Shane, there's very few venues that look good on TV in Texas. And there's nothing against, I love the state of Texas. If you're listening from Texas, I apologize. I know how proud of you are, but it's not going to look as good as a golf course up in the Northeast. It's just bottom line. It's this is a golf course created on, a piece of land the PGA found. Gil Hanse did their thing. I'm sure it's going to be compelling architecturally for like what Gil typically does. It'll play long, it'll be windy, and I'm sure the right champion's going to win. But there's just so many questions about PGA Frisco next year, and if it doesn't go smooth, I just don't know.
It's a little bit like, okay, let's say in a sport you have match play and it's like, 5 of your guys against 5 of their guys, and they put their best guy up and you just kind of throw it. You put your worst guy because you're like, we're going to be fine in the rest of the 4 matches. But to your point, maybe that's good to have Frisco this year. It's like, where are you going to have that competes with? Where are you going to have that competes with Pebbles, St. Andrews, and Augusta? Throw it. Just throw 2027. Come back strong in 28.
Yes. Hey, also, like real quick on just I know we're wrapping up this conversation on the identity of it, but you've been out on the grounds. You've watched these groups, and you know the difference in a U.S. Open crowd and a PGA crowd. And not to say that it's a different amount of people, but it feels a little bit more like corporate hospitality for a PGA, where the U.S. Open feels like as a fan, you're walking in and getting to experience it with everybody else. Now there is corporate hospitality, of course, that the USGA has, but does it not feel a way less, and there's more grandstand behind the greens, just an overall better viewing experience for the fan, feeling like they're a part of something, where the PGA is maybe more like an upscale PGA Tour event? Do you get that sense at all?
100%. And I think that's true about the Ryder Cup too. Actually, I thought at Bethpage, it was just so egregious. I was so excited for Bethpage. I remember the first day walking out, it's like, oh God, everything is just tense. It's like whatever view you thought you were going to get is just tense and stands and everything. So yeah, I think that's true. I totally agree with you. It just seems to be their MO in some way. So it is what it is, but I completely agree. The Open is much better. The Masters is better. And the U.S. Open is totally better.
We'd be remiss, Shane, because we have you on the show here, and you are like the authority on the Ryder Cup. I mean, you've wrote numerous books on the topic. Like you love and immerse yourself in the topic of the Ryder Cup and the competition itself. And I'm wondering just where you stand on what we're looking at Adair Manor next year, where we have Jim Furyk in as a captain. We thought for a long while it might be Tiger Woods. There are kind of other factors that played in there. And against that Jim Furyk appointment, we're looking at Luke Donald, who's already made scouting trips to Adair Manor, who is preparing for a potential 3 wins in a row, maybe the greatest Ryder Cup captain of all time. This is highly open-ended, but just give me where you're standing on general thoughts on both sides as we're looking ahead to the Ryder Cup at Adair Manor in 2027.
So when the Furyk announcement was made, I wrote on Digest, I said, this is the best choice you could have made. And the amount of hate I got for that was incredible.
Well, you're right, though.
You're not wrong. I think I'm right. And I'll give you my quick spiel, which is that looking at the overarching history of the modern U.S. Ryder Cup, for a long time, there was no real tactics because, until the 80s, they just beat them every single time. So Europe, when they became Europe, had to kind of devise tactics because they didn't have players that were as good as the Americans. And they still don't, even though it's way closer. But they came up with a whole system and a template that over 40 years, with only a few aberrations, they have kept developing. And so the U.S. at a certain point figured it out, but it took like 30 of those years. But Paul Azinger did a great job in 2008, and he happened to run up against one of the few bad European captains in Faldo. They kind of forgot what he did, but then Davis Love picked it up in 12. Davis Love did a great job and got incredibly unlucky on Sunday at Medina. They threw out everything. They brought Tom Watson in, disaster. And then it comes to the point where the important thing about Furyk is, which is they developed this task force, which because it's called a task force, everybody laughs at it. But I thought the three guys who became captains who were on that task force, Davis Love, Steve Stricker, and Jim Furyk, really did a good job taking what worked with Azinger and with Love and Medina, making a system that would do well. And what happened is two of those guys got a home Ryder Cup, and one guy got an away Ryder Cup. It's really hard to win an away Ryder Cup. And so Stricker and Love
Can we ask right here, like, is Jim Furyk getting all-time hosed here? Like, getting Paris 100%. And Adair Manor? Like, is this the worst for someone who is an exceptional leader? Is this like the worst draw he could have gotten?
Totally. And like Paris, he was also handicapped by Tiger had just won and Bryson had won twice. You got to take him as captain's picks, and they're terrible for that course, and they played terribly. And Phil kind of played terribly as well. Anyway, I think he was a big part of this American resurgence, which they then threw away again after Rome, had this disaster at Bethpage with a captain who didn't know what he was doing, was very unprepared. But I think Furyk is going to bring them back to a place of, okay, we have a system that we're going to build on from year to year. And he's talked about that. And Charlie, to your point, they're not going to win at Adair Manor, in my opinion. I think he's kind of like, he's like a sacrificial guy where he's like, I'm going to get you back on track. And in the meantime, by doing so, become the only captain to go 0-2. And I guarantee you when he loses at Adair, everybody's going to go, well, this is what you get with Furyk, right? What did you think was going to happen? He blew it in Paris. He blew it here. But I think he's going to get them going. And then hopefully they have a system that takes place where they can start winning after that pretty consistently. But I don't see, what did you want to do? Just throw some rando out there again? Like, how well did that work with Tom Watson and Glen Eagles? How well did it work with Keegan at Bethpage? So I thought it was really a pretty good solution to a very tough problem.
My only argument about Adair Manor is with Aaron Rai winning the PGA Championship, that obviously boosts him way up and potentially going to be on that Ryder Cup team. You know, a lot of the team at that Ryder Cup for the United States and Bethpage was a team that I don't think any of us could have ever predicted, right? Heading into the year, you know, with Ben Griffin, you know, having the year that he had coming out. And then, of course, JJ Spawn winning the U.S. Open. Now, these are players who would have normally relied on picks. Now, I know Ben Griffin got picked, but JJ Spawn qualifying on points. You know, it feels like Luke Donald has been able to just kind of take the same team and hasn't been forced into a box that from a point standpoint that the United States has maybe more talent that kind of finds its way in and hasn't been quite as consistent as maybe it was you know, before Liv, you know, came around when you had Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka, and then you had Morikawa coming on the scene. Jordan and JT were shoe-ins every single year. And now the United States team is like, I can't decide if they're going to go young or they're going to go old. And I think that's kind of the place they're in now. And then you have the outlier, the person you weren't expecting get thrown in the bunch. And I think these captains have a really difficult job for the United States side. I certainly think Keegan did, because I don't think there's any right answers, because sure, why wouldn't you want to take Brooks and Jordan? And I'm not sure, maybe I'm not if DJ's the right answer right now. I probably haven't quite seen enough from him.
How about Patrick Reed?
Patrick Reed? That would be my question, Shane, is like, do you think that job is harder because the amount of talent and just the way guys can kind of work their way in?
Yeah, I think it is. I think 100% it is. And we've seen, you know, we talked about Paris, where sometimes you can get handcuffed a little bit, where it's like, there's not really a good option here. I think with 6 captains picks, it does give you more flexibility, where you can, and I think what you can look at is, if I were Furyk anyway, I would say, I'm going to be ruthless this time, because look how it happened last time. I don't have to take whatever the equivalent of Tiger or Bryson is this time just because they won. You know, Luke Donald is going to be ruthless. If Aaron Rye's not playing well, he's not going to be on that team if he doesn't end up in the top 6. I mean, they will 100% do that, and they're not scared to. And you kind of got to fight fire with fire a little bit in that sense. But Smylie, you're 100% right, where there's going to be guys probably in the top 6 who you wouldn't have taken otherwise, that are going to make that team. And you just kind of got to roll with it. I will say, I'm one of these people who, I'm the antithesis of the, hey, they just putted better crowd. Like I'm like, strategy matters, leadership matters. I think the players individually, you can survive not having a couple guys that you want on that team. Just a quick example off the top of my head. McGinley in 2014 had Victor Dubuisson, which is not anybody's idea of like, oh, great teammate, you know, a real social guy that everybody's going to love. But he spent like 2 years making him comfortable with Graham McDowell and kind of building faith and trust in him, so that by the time Glen Eagles rolled around, he was ready to go. So I think it's really about leadership and strategy. You want great players, of course, but it's not going to kill you if there's like, oh, crap, this guy was number 5 and now I have to have him on my team.
I do, Charlie. I still think about Luke Donald's press conference that I guess not. It's more State of the Union at the Ryder Cup, when you have both captains out there making their speeches. And then after that speech of Luke Donald, where he kind of called the question of the PGA or the United States players and, you know, playing what they're playing for and what their purpose is.
Yes.
It was so odd to me, because Luke Donald and Keegan Bradley are good buddies. And when Keegan probably heard those words uttered from Luke, he was probably just like shell shocked. And honestly, it was a good like psychological play. It was such a, I mean, it's war at Ryder Cup, and I don't know if Keegan was quite ready for that first punch right at the press conference.
Well, and I just wonder too, Shane, like, is the U.S. team in a sort of in a wicked learning environment of sorts, where you have like you're kind of reacting to previous captains. You've had all this, you know, critical feedback about this boys club, and so you kind of go away with that with Keegan. That doesn't work, and now you go back to Jim Furyk, and you're looking at what looks to be a potential loss in their manner. Yet Jim Furyk is an exceptional leader and one that's been part of this group that helped develop this pod system, these you know, this infrastructure on the U.S. side that to some degree mirrors what they built on the European side, like all these sort of systems and things that have helped them kind of structure this Ryder Cup preparation process that's helped them win these past few Ryder Cups. So I wonder, from your perspective, how do you take it forward from an American perspective? Like, do you have to go back to the well with these guys who are entrenched in this system where they kind of built these these things that worked for some period of time, or do you need to break free of that and go to a younger captain to find success again? I think it's a very
well,
interesting.
They tried that technically.
Well,
yeah, they gave that a shot. Yeah.
But I mean, don't you think, Shane? It's like they found themselves in a very interesting. The questions they're asking of the leadership are unique and challenging, whereas like Europe seems to have found this sort of straightforward play with, just roll out Luke Donald for as many times as he's willing to do it, and we're going to keep winning Ryder Cups.
What's tough about it is that, for better or worse, Europe again has developed they almost operate like a Fortune 500 company, and they've, over 40 years they've developed this, and Luke Donald's their leader, and they will do anything at this point, where it's like, okay, the tradition in Ryder Cup history is you don't captain twice. Well, this guy did well, and we haven't won on the road in a bunch, okay, let's do him again. Oh, he did well, let's do it again. They're just not afraid to throw anything out. They learn, down to the smallest detail, they learn every time. So you have to match them. Right, you just got to try to match them, and the only way to do that is to try to have some system. Right, what you can't do, which we've seen, is careen wildly between different systems and hope that, like the Keegan Bradley thing, like when you try to track their mindset, it's like, okay, he got left off the team the year before in Rome, and it was pretty sad, and it was made sadder by the fact that it was featured on Full Swing. Everybody saw it. And you can't tell me that didn't play, like it wasn't like almost a sympathy or a pity pick or something like that. That had to be a major part of it. And it's like, nowhere have I heard that Keegan Bradley came to them with some great plan, which then you could start rationalizing it, right? Where it's like, well, this guy's like Azinger. He's coming in. He's thought about it. Nothing. No, they called him up and he was as shocked as anybody else. And it's like, from a leadership perspective, how do you think that's going to work? Right. It's so bafflingly stupid, like, to do that. And it makes you feel bad for Keegan because he was set up to fail, in my opinion. So what I'm saying is, you can't just change tack every single time, or Europe's going to eat you alive. You're going to play right into their hands every single time, like you did at Bethpage. And so this is why I think, again, Furyk's the best pick, where it's like, whatever happens, stick with it for a little while and just hope that in 10 years, you're kind of on equal footing or something like that.
Furyk was actually the guy that left JT off that team at the President's Cup. So he's not afraid to leave off, one of the United States best players, or at least the most experience. Last question for you here, Shane. Is there a player that comes to mind that you feel has been like a Ryder Cup snub for a captain, that you feel, we look back over time, we're like, man, how did that person not become a Ryder Cup captain?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the ultimate historical one is probably Larry Nelson for the Americans.
Now we have to endure months of manufactured rumors about will he or won't he retire LeBron James. They are probably, Donnie, working on the Decision 2.0 for Amazon Prime as we speak. Is Jim Gray still around? But here is the beauty of the predictive markets. They make insufferable stories about insufferable people highly profitable.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You can recruit super young talent that may go in the NBA. You can recruit older guys and have them grow up together. But if you want players to stay, either sign them to contracts or treat them well enough where they're going to stay. To me, it's pretty simple. And, a lot of coaches last year had good years and they left skid marks on their schools and nobody said a word.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Job, clearly, right? They're 16-4 since he took over, but we have to remember when Rob Thompson took over for the Phillies and they went 65-46 back in 2022, he finished 5th in NL Manager of the Year that year. So could Mattingly win it? Of course, but he doesn't really have history on his side. I'm still on Don Kelly 15-1 to win Manager of the Year.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
they're trading right now currently at 74 wins on the season, which means the Kalshi marketplace goes by 5-win intervals. 75 plus wins for those Houston Astros. That's a 49% contract to the yes, which a $100 investment pays back $205, Greg. I'm not high on this team. Look, again, 75 wins for the Astros is terrible, but this team might not even look the same as where we stand today by the time we get to that deadline.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
How good does it get, SK?
Why not us, Troy?
Today, live from the Pinecrest Inn, it's the Smylie Show. So long, everybody.
This is the Smylie Show.
Smylie, I got one more to kind of close the show out for you here. And it's an interesting one. We've had some of this content making the rounds on social media this past week because it's an excerpt of Bryson DeChambeau's appearance on the Katie Miller podcast. This actually was recorded before his miscut in Aronimink. And of the many quotes that have been making the rounds, there's one that stood out to me most against what we've discussed on this show. He said, "I'm in that weird space right now. I don't know what to do, either content creation or professional golf. I don't know what to do right now." This is, of course, set against everything that's happening with Live Golf. We recapped that in a previous video. You can go back and check out that. We're just talking about every single permutation of the league's potential future. But I think embedded in this specific quote from Bryson is a big shift, right? Because the question that we've asked here on our show is, would Bryson consider only doing YouTube golf and playing major championships, right? Could he go tourless at a certain point and just live on exemptions until he needed to qualify again? This feels a little different to me, right? Like, do I want to leave pro golf behind entirely for content creation at the age of 32? How are you wrapping your head around where he seems to be right now?
How are you wrapping your head around it? Let's start there, and we'll go off of your
okay,
first
great.
take. You'll get
That's
first
great.
take here.
There we go. There's like I was gonna say a snake draft, but it's a take draft. We're gonna come around.
Well, I'm curious what your thoughts are here, because I have general thoughts, and I want to see if we're kind of aligned here.
So my thoughts go in a couple different directions, right? I think the first is just like sign of the times. Like, this is it. Can you imagine at any previous iteration of, just golf, the game of golf itself, where a guy who'd reached the upper echelons of the sport, a guy's a 2-time major winner in the prime of his career, said, "Yep, there's something else out there in this game that's better than playing pro golf and suits me perfectly, and I'm just going to go do that." I mean, that's like, I don't even know what his participation in that space looks like. Like, is he like playing alongside Grant Horvat all the time, or the Bryan Bros, or and no disrespect, those guys are all phenomenal players. Bryson DeChambeau's won 2 U.S. Opens. Like, it's a little bit different. So I think that's the first thing to me, is like, wow, what a place we've arrived. I think the second to me is trying to figure out how the financials are supposed to work there, where we've read reports and heard rumors about Bryson asking Liv, before this whole thing kind of fell apart, for $500 million, right? So, okay, if he wants that type of money, and then you look at like the nature of the structure of most of these NIL deals that players have, and that a lot of those are predicated on how much exposure are you getting playing televised professional golf. Now, those brands could receive all sorts of exposure via his YouTube channel, and there could be a restructuring of a contract that reflects that exposure. But I just don't know. Like, when he says content creation, I'm like, I would love to know what he means exactly by that. Like, is it just playing golf? Is he going to start his own like Mr. Beast style, like Mr. Bryson spinoff channel where he's doing other content and it's all within this Bryson world? I don't know, but I have so many more questions than I have answers right now.
Well, he clearly, he's getting a lot of satisfaction from the amount of fans and people that he have impacted through this YouTube channel. Like, I think that's given him a sense of purpose of, I'm going to continue on this path with the YouTube channel. Sure, he's making a ton of money doing it. He's having a lot of fun doing it. And I think he's found a little inner child in himself doing it.
Yeah.
But in this, I think if you got down too far down the road and you just did, YouTube golf creation, and you start to see your game slide to where, he's been able to seamlessly play Live Golf, which is a shorter schedule, do all this YouTube golf creation and still show up to the majors and be one of the few guys from the Live Golf Tour to really still feel like he didn't have a dip in form. Now, we've kind of gone back down a little bit to where you can start to point to, okay, is he slipping a little bit? That is to be determined. But I think the financials is a big important piece, because I think you're right. When Bryson, when all the contract negotiations were coming up, and he's asking for $500 million, and there's a back and forth, and they're trying to figure out, from the PIF and Live side, is like, what is the worth of Bryson DeChambeau to this league? And if he goes, does the league completely tank? Is this Bryson's league? And I think the negotiations back and forth, and they never landed on a number, right? Like, is he never officially re-signed, which was the worst case scenario, of course, when Bryson was probably, I'm sure, blindsided like the rest of the guys on the tour, when PIF ultimately is going to pull, their funding from Live moving forward. And now Bryson's just sitting here, just like, I almost signed for let's say he was going to sign for $250 million. Like, let's say that was actually attainable number, which I actually truly believe was an attainable number for him to get from the Saudis. And now that number is zero. So how can he go to Live Golf to feel like he's being made worth in this? Because at one point, how, like 6 months later, how can you play that same tour and for the $0 that at one point he was going to have 250? It's just really hard to wrap your brain around. And so I'm sure he's doing the mental gymnastics himself, running through those numbers. And who wouldn't, right? Like, that would be really tough to then go swallow your pride and be like, you know what? I like this league so much now that I'm going to do it for free. And I'm just going to play for the money that they come up with. And I'm going to get more equity in the league. And this is going to be, whatever the equity stake that he has in it, it's going to feel like it's the Bryson DeChambeau league. And the only other option is to come back to the PGA Tour, which I don't think he's going to want to pay his way back. I don't think, especially after, not getting a big bonus from the second contract. And I don't know if he wants to either. That's the other part. I really, truly believe that I don't know if the PGA Tour and Bryson DeChambeau, if that's like a perfect marriage anymore. And he left out going out in flames. I think he was a part of the lawsuit. I can't even remember. But I'm sure if he was, then yeah. I'm sure that his coming back to the PGA Tour might be a little bit more difficult. Although Brian Rolapp looks at it in a way as like, does the player help the tour? Then yes, and they're all have to figure it out. But yeah, that's where I stand. I think we're kind of on the same page, right?
I think so.
Hey there, it's your buddy Craig Carton. If you're trying to find out how to get all the great content that me and Tyrone Johnson give you every single day, here's Tyrone to tell you how.
You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and of course, Amazon Music as well. We're at all four.
That's right. It's the Craig Carton Show podcast every weekday morning live at 11, replayed at noon on YouTube and on SportsGrid throughout the country. Check it out.
They're trading right now currently at 74 wins on the season, which means the Kalshi marketplace goes by 5-win intervals. 75-plus wins for those Houston Astros. That's a 49% contract to the yes, which a $100 investment pays back $205, Greg. I'm not high on this team. Look, again, 75 wins for the Astros is terrible, but this team might not even look the same as where we stand today by the time we get to that deadline.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
You can recruit super young talent that may go in the NBA. You can recruit older guys and have them grow up together. But if you want players to stay, either sign them to contracts or treat them well enough where they're going to stay. To me, it's pretty simple. And, you know, a lot of coaches last year had good years and they left skid marks on their schools and nobody said a word.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Go over the summer where there's drastic changes and gas drops down to $3 a gallon, $2.50 a gallon in some states, and then you have some of the price markets go down. You ride that momentum is what Joe's talking about. So if you say right now, which party will win the U.S. House, and you think it's the Republicans currently trading at 20%, you take them now, and if good press comes, that turns into 25% and 30%, then you have the option to cash out.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
Because it's just not a threat anymore. They're not threatening the United States market if they're not playing there. But what they are taking away from you is some top end talent. Players aren't going to be rushing to go over there anymore without the guarantee of the money and the guarantee of the big purses. Now, could they play for some money? Sure. Is it going to be what they had? No. Are these guys going to be able to re-sign for big deals? No. So it's not enough golf to stay competitive. So guys that are young are going to have to get DP World Tour status and try to chase it out there, which gives them more access to play potentially in more majors. But if you're a young 20-something-year-old, like 10 events is not enough. Like you have got to find a way to play the DP World Tour, or maybe there's a world in which these guys can try to also qualify for the PGA Tour. I just don't know how that would work, but 10's a way better number than 14.
Well, I think that, I think a lot of things, but I'd start with that if you are, I'd seen the report about exclusively global. I'd not seen the 10 event thing, which I just think, again, I think that's a mini tour. I just don't know how you build that as a standalone thing that justifies $250 million of investment. Like, I guess nothing that I've seen that's come out since this initial announcement, the PIF's pulling funding, has struck me as a compelling business proposal. And I just like, I think a 10 event deal that is
it's not
add on
golf,
to another
dude.
league.
Only
What's
10
that?
events is only 10 events is insane.
It's less than one event per month. Like, I just don't know what we're, and especially if, you kind of hinted at it here in the way you teed this up, which is if this makes it more palatable to the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, or the Asian Tour, whatever, where it's like, yeah, you can play this other tour and have these as an add-on and not be like not needing a conflicting event release type situation, then okay, then maybe it works as like a sort of add-on tour. But I don't think anyone who is serious about competing in professional golf can look at a 10 event schedule for a year and say, yes, that's going to get me places in the game of golf. And so then how is it compelling? Like if it's only 10 events, why am I playing in it unless it's like some absurd venue or some absurd purse? And the purses aren't going to be absurd anymore because they're not being underwritten every year by the PIF to the tune of $1 billion. So I just don't, I mean, is it a good idea in a vacuum? Like, sure. I don't, conceptually as a continuation of
It's just a business model. League. It's a business model that you just question more than anything. I don't doubt
how do you sell against
the event in Adelaide and South Africa and Spain, and name a couple more events where they've had success. I don't doubt that people show up. I don't doubt that it's a good time. What I question is if you only have 10 of them, that is just not a formula that feels like that's something that people are just going to be drawn to as a player, first and foremost, to go and play. Because it's until the PGA Tour gives you any type of handshake as a player to either go compete over there or vice versa. It just seems, for these guys that are trying to play professional golf, still 10 events is nothing for a year.
Well, it's almost, I'd almost say I'd rather rebrand the league at that point than exist as a continuation of LIV, simply because it's such a different concept of like how you're going to be able to structure it. Like, I know it's still 14 to 10. It's like not that far off, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to me in terms of, hey, this is telling a good and compelling story about the next step in the evolution of this brand. Like, and now if you just start something from fresh, just out of thin air, let's say it was the Premier Golf League that was the original concept of LIV, and we found a better way to do this, and we've spoken with the PGA Tour, we've spoken with all DP World Tour, and we have a way to work on the ecosystem and be respectful of those things, and it's going to be this 10 event international series. Like, that to me at a fresh face value sounds a lot more compelling, but I just think I'm not trying to be negative LIV here. I'm just saying it's just, given where you've been with the league, given the size of the fees you pay for these players and what they're expecting in terms of purses and all the things you promised, it's just hard for that to be the next step for me.
The team thing doesn't work, but that's what they have to hold on to, because there's at least enough. They think there's enough value in it to where there's enough people that are aware of all these teams, and especially the ones that have affiliations within a country, South Africa and Australia, and then you have other rebrandings that are happening that they think might have value. It's just, I don't know. It feels like it's as far away now to hitting as it did, at the very infancy stage. I don't know. It's just bizarre to me.
We'll see you next week on the Golf Channel. This has been The Smylie Show.
I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our lovely fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too, so please keep it up.
For all the good people at YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the